New York Rangers podcast. I'm Andrew Chunley on vacation in a different setting than what I normally am, alongside Nick Zararis. And Nick, free agency is officially upon us.
I can't believe all these contracts were ready to go at 12:01 p.m. It's almost
A
like
miracle.
It's almost like these general managers and the agents might not be respecting the rules of the collective bargaining agreement because it benefits them. But
No,
neither
they wouldn't do that.
they wouldn't. They wouldn't disrespect the sanctity of Gary Bettman's league.
Right.
Only Gary Bettman gets to disrespect the sanctity of his league. But more on him later. A lot of money thrown around today. This isn't quite the 2016 NBA offseason where the cap went up $20 million and, Harrison Barnes got like $180 million from the Kings. But there was a lot of new money in the system this year, and you saw a lot of teams eager to throw it around. The Canucks made a bunch of big moves. The Bruins, the Predators, the Capitals, the Kraken, Utah, a whole bunch of teams were eager and excited to throw all of this money they had out trying to improve their teams. And quite a few teams, I think, made some interesting decisions. We'll touch on the Capitals, who really pushed some chips in on a group that isn't high end, but they're definitely a lot better than they were last year. Anytime you can add somebody like Chytil who profiles as a number one defenseman, that's a good summer, especially considering you didn't have to give up that much in Nick Jensen and a mid-round pick, but they had a nice day. I thought the Devils, they had a nice day adding Brett Pesce, somebody who I really think is going to fit very nicely for them. That was their big issue last year. But this is a Rangers podcast, so we'll start with the elephant in the room, and then we'll get to the trades.
Sure.
Until they address what the deal is with Trouba, they are going to be in this weird in-between.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I said this earlier today, and I'll repeat it now. The Rangers, hypothetically, if they were going to sign a Marchessault, a Stamkos, whatever, they could have done that today. They don't need to sign Lindgren or Schneider until close to when the season starts, because that's when it starts getting towards the arbitration stuff. But they could have signed those if they wanted somebody who was expensive today. They could have signed one of those guys. They have 10% overage in the offseason, figure out the Trouba thing, and then you take care of Schneider and Lindgren. So that leads me to believe the Rangers weren't particularly close on any of these people. Mm-hmm. I had heard for most of last week that they weren't very serious about Patrick Kane. That was more of Patrick Kane's camp trying to use the Rangers to get a little bit more money from Detroit. And to be fair, Patrick Kane got a good incentive-laden contract where if he hits all of those thresholds, he's going to come away with like $6.5 million next season, which that's a lot of money for 36-year-old Patrick Kane.
Sure.
They never really, it seems like we're that seriously in on Steven Stamkos, even though a few people had mentioned them as a candidate for that. It seemed very clearly that once Tampa Bay had pivoted to Jake Gensel, that Stamkos had Nashville in mind, because that was reported Saturday night that Nashville was a serious contender for Stamkos. And very clearly that and Marchessault came together very quickly for them. And we're going to sit here and wait. The Rangers have money right now. The Rangers have $13 million in cap space at this exact moment. Now, half of that is going to go away when you extend Schneider and Lindgren, but you're still going to have $5 to $6 million. And yes, I know they got Reilly Smith, so that number is actually probably closer to like 11 and a half as opposed to 13 or 14 and a half, but they still have enough money where they could have brought somebody in if they had a strong enough conviction about it, or they had if they knew what they wanted to do. I think once again, this is a case where the Rangers pivoted to something too late and they didn't give themselves enough time to take action to do what they wanted to do. It seems like they came to this decision on, all right, we got to get rid of Trouba very quickly and did not put themselves in a position to be able to execute it in time to be available to make some things happen. And maybe their plan wasn't to be involved in free agency. Maybe they've been working the trade market and maybe there's another move to be made. That's entirely possible, so you got to wait and see what happens. But based on how the last 3 days have played out, it seems like they made this decision a little bit spur of the moment, and they're trying to play catch up right now, because if they wanted somebody, they could have signed someone today. But other than Sam Carrick and trading for Reilly Smith, they didn't do a lot today.
It does seem to me like Drury and company decided that Trouba's era as a Ranger was over. It seemed like it was made pretty soon before the draft. Like it was decided almost, I don't want to say haphazardly, but like so quickly that there wasn't enough time to build out a cohesive plan A, plan B, and plan C like you normally would when you have a contract like that you would want to move out. When you have a bloated contract like LA did with Pierre-Luc Dubois, you have a plan. Okay, but the absolute plan Z is to buy out. But if you have a player that you really want to get rid of, you build multiple plans of, okay, plan A is to do this, plan B could be to do this, like plan C, if everything fails we try to do this, like and then the absolute last thing that if nothing else, if none of our 25 other plans work, we can always just buy out the player if need be. The Rangers, it seems like, didn't build those plans because the reporting got from, oh, but potentially Trouba was going to get dealt, to, oh my god, this is happening today, as in like the draft, right? Like the Friedman was on it, Kaplan was on it, all the insiders at the draft were like, this is real, this is happening today. And it didn't get done today for whatever reason. That trade didn't happen at the draft. Okay, fine. Now Trouba has an NTC, a 15-team no trade clause, as opposed to a no move clause. Now he can say no to 15 teams, but he can't say no to all 31 other teams. Okay, well, or he can't say no to the rest of the 16 other teams. I'm sorry, of the 31. Okay, well, Detroit was supposedly in for Trouba for a while. That's who he was supposed to go to during the draft. That didn't end up happening. Now the reports are the teammates are all upset about how this is going down. Even though, again, if he would just play better, none of this would be going on. But he's a net negative on the ice, so that's why the Rangers want to move on from him. Sure. Okay. Well, they decided this so quickly that it's July 1st. He's still on the team. Everybody's mad. Nobody really knows what's going on. They didn't sign anybody besides Sam Carrick, and they traded for Reilly Smith, which we'll get to in a second, and he's still here. So you have Ryan Lindgren without a contract. You have Braden Schneider without a contract. Eric Gustafsson has since signed in Detroit, which by all accounts means that Zach Jones will be the 6D. Sure, that's fine. And Jacob Trouba is still there. And now he's stuck in limbo. Drury's stuck in limbo. Everybody's kind of waiting to see what's going on. It's like this again. I'm just gonna quote from The Office again, but it's like that scene from The Office where like there's the three, I forget who it is, but the three people are standing around in the office, all just pointing finger guns at each other, just waiting for something to happen. Like this is what standoff. Yeah, like this is what this reminds me of. Like everybody's just at our
Okay. Andrew froze temporarily, so I'm going to wait a second. I'm going to give him a minute. If it doesn't reconnect, I will refresh the page and we will keep going. So give Andrew a second, but maybe. Yes. No. There you go.
Oh,
there you go. You're back.
I feel like you didn't have to get to this point.
You're good. Yeah. I completely agree with you. The one thing the Rangers do have to worry about now is that because they tried to screw Trouba very easily can screw them and basically put only teams that have enough cap space to take him as teams that he would accept the trade to. So he can put the Panthers and the Lightning and these teams that don't have any money and box the Rangers into a corner and turn this into a hostage situation. I don't think he's going to do that because I think, and again, this is, I think, right. I don't know.
Sure.
I think he is self-aware enough to realize that if he comes back, it is not going to be a good reflection on him. I think very quickly the situation is going to look very bad for everybody involved. And wouldn't you rather go somewhere you are wanted to play as opposed to walking around on eggshells? Because that's what it is if you come back. You're telling me first day of training camp, he's going to walk in, see Chris Drury and Peter Laviolette. He's going to have a big smile on his face. He's a professional. He's going to be able to pretend everything is okay. But I don't imagine he's going to be comfortable coming back here. And there are considerations here. The Rangers have put themselves in a situation where, as Andrew and I have alluded, they came to this decision very quickly. If they hadn't, if it had been more of a planned out thing, you probably would have had this ready to go so that by the time the draft itself came around, you had the trade ironed out. Because technically speaking, the Trouba did not have to give a list until today. Because of that, there was no guarantee that a trade could have happened before today, because technically he still had the full no movement clause where he could not be moved to any team no matter what. He had a full no movement anywhere. Now it goes down to 16 teams. Because of that, he has to give them choices as to where to go. Them asking for his list is not the same as trading the guy. Andrew disconnected, so I'm going to go here. We're going to go here. Whenever Andrew rejoins the room, we'll click him back in. But for now, I'll keep talking on the Trouba subject till he gets back in here. We got any late breaking news? Blake Lizotte, 2 times 1.85 for Pittsburgh. Parker Kelly, 2 by 825 for Colorado. Okay. Oh, there he is, maybe. Yeah, there we go.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah, you're good. Yeah, no, just talking about how technically, because the Rangers started to get the ball in motion on Friday, he didn't have to accept the trade until today, because technically he doesn't have the full no movement list until today. I will say, this idea that he was caught entirely off guard by the premise he could be moved seems a little bit like, I don't want to call it image maintenance, but it's very clearly image maintenance from his camp to make it seem like he's an aggrieved party. This is professional sports.
Yep.
Anybody can be traded. Wayne Gretzky was traded multiple times. If Wayne Gretzky can be traded, anyone can be traded. I don't know how much of your history you know, Jacob Trouba, but the Rangers have done this a few times. You know, Ryan McDonough, Ryan Callahan, they traded Brian Leetch. If the Rangers can trade Brian Leetch, they can trade anybody. I don't want to call him naive, but I do think he was a little too comfortable based on his assessment of his own play, because objectively, he was their worst player in the playoffs. Objectively. Yeah. I don't know how you could walk away from that postseason and think, yeah, I'm totally safe.
I was shocked.
Yeah, like
the reports are saying that he was shocked that he's been on the market, that he was on the market, and that the Rangers wanted to trade him. My brother in Christ, did you watch the playoffs? Did you watch the tape? Did you watch what you did?
Maybe the Rangers don't watch tape. Maybe that's the secret. Everybody has an outsized opinion of themselves because the Rangers don't crunch the tape. But until they rectify the Trouba thing, they're going to be sitting here. Yeah. And it's going to be not a good look for anybody involved. They got to find somewhere he's willing to go that can afford to take him. And hopefully it's not a team that they're going to have to kind of eat shit on to make the deal happen, where they're going to be like, okay, well, now that we're doing you a favor and you're going to retain salary and you're going to give us a decent asset to take him to, as opposed to what had been originally reported, where they were going to retain like 30% and they were going to get something in return from Detroit. Now we wait, and until something happens, we just sit here waiting. And Drury is an extremely opaque individual. He is not, he's not Jarmo Kakalainen, who's going to talk to the media every other day to try and let them know how smart he is. He is extremely difficult to get any read on. And because of that, we're going to sit here and pretty much, I don't want to call it objective silence, but pretty much
that's what this is.
We won't know anything. And they weren't able to be active as I imagine they wanted to be. And again, like we said before, maybe they're in on a trade. Maybe they're trying to put together a trade for something else, and then they'll take care of the Trouba thing and they'll go from there. But that is a different possibility. And until we get reporting that, they're trying to make Trevor Zegras happen, or Ryan Hartman, or Alex Tuch, or whoever, we can't say, this is possible, because we don't know.
Vince tweeted this yesterday, and he says, and I quote, part of the reason Trouba wanted to come to New York in the first place was for his wife's medical career. Now they have a 6-month-old. I think she's part of a medical program, so she's working in the area. And I don't think that he and Goudreau have the way that Goudreau and Trouba have been handled this offseason is sitting well with some teammates. Now, I quote tweeted this yesterday, and I said, do you want to form a friendship circle, or do you want to win the Stanley Cup? Because, and I say this with the caveat of course, emotions play some role in team environments, right? I'm not out here suggesting, as I've gotten some replies over the past 24 hours, and I've said this on the show multiple times. Of course, there's some form of emotion and chemistry going on. These are human beings. These aren't NHL 24 just characters that you put in to the lines and then you just trot them out there for 82 games. That's not what this is. This is human beings. Is our reality. I'm not suggesting you throw all that out the window. But what I am saying to you is that what matters to you more? Does the book club matter? Is that at the top of your list, followed by the Stanley Cup? Or is the Stanley Cup more important to you than keeping the members of the book club? You have to figure it out. And like that's number one question for everybody that was bothered by the handling of Gaudreau and Trouba. First of all, Gaudreau should never have had a no trade clause to begin with because he's a fourth liner. Fourth liners should not be getting no trade clauses. If you want to give Trouba one because he's making $8 million, he's the captain, I see the logic. Fine. You want to do that? Fine. Whatever. Go ahead. Gaudreau was not good. His entire career as a Ranger was not good. He was vastly overpaid. He had a heater in the playoffs, to his credit. Everything that he shot went in the net. Hands up. He was one of the few people alongside Lafreniere that did anything of notice against the Florida Panthers, sure. But even then, he still got outscored at 5-on-5, even with his ridiculous heater. But Mans was not good. So he got waived and sent to San Jose. Jacob Trouba was an atrocity in the playoffs again. He scares nobody. I don't care that he chicken wings people. I don't care that you enjoy the hits. I don't care. I'm sure he's a great guy. I have no issue with him as a person. But he was awful. He was miserable. Everybody, whether it be Florida, whether it be the Hurricanes, all they had to do was take just a little stride, and they beat him easily. Because he has no foot speed. So he has to chicken wing as his way of catching up to players beating him. This man is making $8 million a year to do that defensively. And on top of that, he doesn't do anything offensively either. So why it's a shock to his teammates and to Trouba that he was on the trading block is a shock to me, given how he played. Again, all the players had to do is watch the film, and they would understand why he would be getting moved. I get that he's a great guy. Listen, I'm sure, but you can have friends on other teams. It's not illegal. Just because you're friends with somebody doesn't mean that they're going to be fantastic for you on the ice, bro. At the end of the day, no matter how many friends you have in this league, no matter how liked you are in the locker room, if you are a net negative on the ice, you are a detriment to the hockey team. I don't care how much you're liked. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, whoever's skating on the other team trying to get past you is going to get past you because you're not good enough to stop him. I don't care that you have friends. That's great. I'm sure you're a great guy. But you're not good enough to play for the Rangers. I'm sorry. Good luck elsewhere.
I've said this more than once in the 3 years since it happened, and I'll reiterate it now. When what happened in 2021 happened between Tony DeAngelo and Alexander Georgiev, and then what happened to Panarin against the Capitals with Tom Wilson, I very deliberately and very straightforwardly said, there is not a captain on this team. Anybody who had a real sense of leadership would have never let either of those things happen. Because number one, if you are in a locker room and you consistently have a loudmouth, pain in the ass, legitimately toxic person running their mouth consistently, you pull them aside and you tell them to shut the fuck up or you're going to be off of the team. And nobody was willing to step up and tell Tony DeAngelo, hey, maybe not a good idea to bust the goalie's balls after losing a game in overtime. The Tom Wilson thing, maybe nobody is a leader on this team if nobody's willing to step up and engage. It really is frustrating because the Rangers are constantly chasing this fairy dust idea of what the perfect team looks like because they are capped out. They cannot go out and just add a Jonathan Marchessault or a Stamkos. They can't just go out and trade for Brady Tkachuk. They have so much money tied up in so few players. And part of the reason I think that this is kind of all of a long-term plan, they got to sign Shesterkin, Lafreniere, and Miller next summer.
Yes, they do.
That is going to be a significant chunk of whatever free cap space you might think you have. Lafreniere plays one more season the way he just did. He's going to get at minimum what Slavkovsky got, if not at least $8.5-9 million per year. K'Andre Miller, if he has the season you think he might be able to have, and you want to go along with him, you're giving him probably pretty close to what Trouba's getting paid right now. You're probably giving him 6-7 years, $7.5, $8 million per year because all the new money in the system. And that's the undercurrent of today. That should be your big takeaway. With every team in the league getting a free $5 million where they didn't have to do anything to get that money, there's going to be a lot of new money in the system. And some of these contracts are going to look very bad. That Chandler Stevenson contract in a vacuum is bad.
Oh, it's awful.
It looks a lot worse because in your head you're like, the cap's $83 million and he's getting $7 million a year, and we're talking about a career third liner. Well, second liner in Vegas, but on most teams would have been a third liner.
Sure.
That type of skill set. Now, with that in mind, and yes, I agree with the person in the chat who just said should have planned better. That's the undercurrent.
Yeah.
The Rangers haven't planned well.
Well, I also, I see this other YouTube comment that we got that Trouba had a fractured ankle, he should have played, and other players should be held accountable. Now,
we agree.
We agree. We agree to that. Sure, he shouldn't have played. Zibanejad, Kreider, and others should have been held accountable. I agree with you. But also, we have to go back to breakup day when Trouba had the best out you could possibly have. He's like, hey, I had a fractured ankle. A chunk of my ankle was removed from me, and I still played. Right, this was like back in March or something. Like, right,
that makes it worse.
I was getting to that.
Poor Andrew froze in the middle of his point. I feel bad now. But that's the point. You do understand that makes it worse. There you go.
Oh, we're back. Yes. Yeah. So the internet's a little spotty up over here. I'm trying my best here, but like, all he had to do was stop there. Just say you had a broken ankle, a fractured ankle, whatever you want to say. I had a chunk out of me removed, whatever. Just leave it at that. My man's had a checkmate in one, and he blundered his queen. He was like, "Oh, but I was fine in the playoffs." My brother in Christ, you don't say that, because now it makes you look so much worse. It makes you look like a complete ass because you had the out. All you had to do was stop talking. And you made it worse by saying, "Oh no, I was fine." Then why were you so bad? Then why were you so miserable? If you were so fine, come playoffs, where was the fine? Is it in the room with us? I don't see it.
Okay. The next major subject of conversation in regards to the Rangers is the looming Igor Shesterkin extension. Now, we all know how this works. His camp puts a number out there to get a temperature check. The number that's out there right now, whatever it is, 12.5, close to 13, that was in the Brooks column as like the percentage of the salary cap. We all know he's not getting that. That is the opening number in a negotiation. It will come down. It'll probably be closer to 11.5. But the second Shesterkin goes from 5.6 million to 11.5 or $12 million, you are doubling the cap hit of your goalie. And this is not to say the Rangers should not do this. This is to say the minute you do this, you are locked in. If you are making your goalie your most expensive player, you have to do more to complement them. And that has been the Rangers' issue for so long, is that because they have such a good goalie, they don't have great player evaluations because they put the goalie performance into the context of the performance of the outlying team. And over the course of an 82-game season and 55 starts, your goalie is good enough on most nights to be the difference. In the regular season, that's great. That's Where you want to be. And I'm not saying you can't win with an expensive goalie. The Panthers just did it. Sure. They kind of had their hand forced into it because they couldn't move that contract. But Bob circled back around. It took about 4 years of that contract for it to start to be worth it for them, but it did circle back around. Vasilevsky, when they won the second Stanley Cup, was on the contract he's currently at. Beyond that, we are going to have to see a fundamental shift in the way the Rangers want to construct this roster because, like we just said, Shesterkin's cap hit is going to double. Lafreniere's cap hit might triple. K'Andre Miller's cap hit is going to double to triple. That is also against the backdrop of, okay, well, Chris Kreider's a free agent in 2 years. Artemi Panarin is a free agent in 2 years. How are we going to fill out this roster in a way that we can maintain a level of competitiveness where where we should think in terms of where the money is going, that Panarin's money is going to go to Lafreniere and some of Shesterkin. And Kreider's money, some of that is going to go to Miller and some of that's going to go to Shesterkin. And then really quickly, you're talking about a team where it's Zibanejad, Trocheck, Lafreniere, and then forwards who aren't currently on the team right now, whether that's an Othman, a Perreault, a Berard, or whether that's somebody entirely outside of the organization. That's probably what you're talking about the Rangers looking like from 2 years from now. Because I think the Rangers are going to make an effort to keep Kreider so he's a lifer Ranger. I think they'll do the same thing with Panarin. I don't think Panarin's going to be amicable to taking, the mid 30s, $5.5 million per year for 6 years deal that we saw get thrown around to guys like Marchessault and Stamkos, because Panarin's like the fourth highest paid player in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still going to be putting up good counting stats into his late 30s because of the role he occupies and his game. Are the Rangers going to be able to say, okay, we have to walk away from him? Then we kind of look stupid if we walk away from Panarin. They have so many moving parts to balance out, and I think that's why you're going to see the Rangers in the bargain bin. It's why they were in the bargain bin last year, and it's why they'll be there again. I thought they maybe could have been in on Anthony Duclair today. I don't think they were going to give him the contract the Islanders did because, like I said, they need the money for Lafreniere, for Miller, for Schneider, for Lindgren, for guys who are going to supposedly be here for the long term.
Right.
You're going to be in the Max Pacioretty, the Jeff Skinner, the Adam Henry. I won't even put Henrique in there because I think he's going to get a decent number. He's going to get like $4.5 million to be someone's third line center. The Rangers can be in the bargain bin. They need to find the 2024 or 2025 Eric Gustafsson because they need another defenseman because we're operating under the assumption that Trouba's gone. They didn't end up tendering Matthew Robertson.
They did,
Very clearly don't feel strongly that he's close to playing in the NHL.
Right.
Because he would have gotten a look at some point in the last year.
Of course.
They had spots. There's a lot of moving parts here. And you want to give the benefit of the doubt that that's what's holding everything up, that they're planning for next year and the year after that, as opposed to, we tried to do this Trouba thing last minute and it didn't really work out. But I have a hard time doing that, having that suspension of disbelief, because frankly, that has been Chris Drury's MO since he got the job, is reacting to something after it happens or turning too late. You have brought up more than once that last year, not putting Lindgren on LTIR was a fatal mistake, that they could have used that money and went out and got a legitimate first pair defenseman to supplement the team last year.
Absolutely.
And that would have made
they had the money. They could have put Trouba on LTIR. They could have
this past season.
Well, even 2 seasons ago, they could have put Lindgren on LTIR. They could have actually gotten pieces that helped what they needed. They would, and on top of that, they wouldn't have needed to do the whole charade thing with Patrick Kane there. Like they could have done a lot better maneuvering with the cap number that they had. They didn't, and then they paid the price for it. Same thing last season. They could have put Trouba on LTIR with his ankle issue for a few weeks here and there until the deadline. Gotten a bunch of a top 4 defenseman. They could have gotten again. How realistic this is, they could have gotten Hanifin. What the price could have been, who knows? It could have been anything. They could have gotten Chychrun. What the price could have been, who knows? But they could have done that. They could have at least tried. They could have put Trouba on LTIR, gotten to the deadline, and just at least gave it the old college try of, okay, we have the space, so might as well just call up everybody who's selling, see what their price is, and go from there. If they want Othman, we'll give them Othman. If they want somebody of a higher tier, maybe we won't, but at least we'll try our best to do that. And if we don't make a trade, okay, fine. We'll just activate Trouba back when he's healthy, and we ride. They didn't do any of that. They settled, and they got what they deserved.
That's really the undercurrent of the last few years, and you can call it's one of two things ultimately. It's either arrogance or it's naivety. It's one of those two.
Yep.
Either this front office is extremely overestimating their own players' talent, which I think based on the fact it's been widely reported Chris Drury viewed Mika Zibanejad better than Jack Eichel 3 years ago. I think it's reasonable to say that maybe some of this is just hubris and misevaluating their own players.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And there's also an element of naivety to this that, we'll figure this out. We'll be okay. And until we get clarity on what the real plan is. And based on what we're hearing and what we've read, the plan is going to be short term. It is going to be 1 year deals to get to next summer. And then at that point, you're capped out because you're paying Shesterkin, you're paying Lafreniere,
Yep.
you're paying Miller. At that point, you can't add more to this group unless the cap goes up a lot more than the 5-ish million they're expecting for year over year.
Sure.
You're not going to be able to add to that group because you're going to have Panarin, Kreider, and Trouba if he's still here, which he won't be, but for the purposes of this conversation,
Sure. He's still here now, so might as well.
You're going to have if I read the Rangers and Jacob Trouba are trying to mend fences tweet or report at some point in the next 3 days, I might be very uninterested in what the Rangers look like this upcoming season. Because you're telling me the plan is to run back a lesser version of the team that went to the conference final. And sure, you don't need to have your finished roster on opening night. You go back and look at some of the opening night lineups the Rangers have fielded the last 3 years. They're fucking hilarious. You look at the one from 3 years ago. The fourth line is Vitaly Kravtsov, Ryan Reeves, and Ryan Carpenter. Like, very clearly, that's not the fourth line of a team that's going on a long playoff run. You don't need to really start rounding out your form and knowing what you want to look like until like February. But you got to give me a reason to believe you understand what the shortcoming is with the team. You have got to give me a reason to believe, okay, we didn't work. Now we're going to try this. Instead, it really does seem to be the plan is we can get more out of Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, Artemi Panarin, and Vinny Trocheck. And I struggle to believe you are going to be able to get more out of Panarin, who put up 120 points and 49 goals. I struggle to believe you are going to get Trocheck to consistently be a point per game forward into his late 30s. I struggle to believe you're going to get Zibanejad or Kreider to get back to that point per game pace that Zibanejad played at 3 years ago, or the 50-goal pace that Kreider played at 3 years ago. I think those are all good hockey players. Panarin is a great hockey player.
Sure.
You cannot realistically tell me your plan is our 4 best forwards are going to put up career years, 2 more straight years, and that's going to be the case. And I'm not even saying adding Jeff Skinner or adding somebody of that tier to this team is going to make them that much better. They're not. But you need to at least give me a reason to care. That's the thing. And I understand this is a little bit anti-intellectual and a little bit away from what we typically do here, but you got to give me a reason to care. Because you bring this group in next year and say, okay, first line right wing is going to be Lafreniere, and then Othman and Berard and Kakko is down the right wing.
With Reilly Smith.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I forgot about Reilly Smith. That goes to show how forgettable that was. But you add Reilly Smith. Reilly Smith couldn't make it work with Malkin. Malkin, all right, this might be a hot take. Malkin last year played better than Zibanejad. And I know Malkin was hurt. I know Malkin wasn't great. He was a point per game last year on a bad Penguins team. And yeah, some of that is playing on
with the worst power play maybe in the history of the NHL.
Malkin played, I want to say 80-something games last year. The year Malkin had last year was better than what Zibanejad gave them. You got to remember, Zibanejad didn't score a 5-on-5 goal for like 2 months.
30 games without a 5-on-5 goal.
I misspoke. Malkin was point per game last year. This past year, he was 67 and 82. But the point being, if Reilly Smith couldn't make it work with Geno Malkin or Sid, you're telling me it's going to work with Mika Zibanejad and Chris Kreider, who they have had 20-something different right wings with over the last 3 years since they traded. It's just, this is all very hard to sell. And the backdrop of it all, they made the conference finals, so ticket prices are going to go up.
Yep.
The team isn't going to be better, but they're going to charge $25 to $50 more a ticket.
Here's the thing, too. The Reilly Smith trade in a vacuum wasn't bad. It wasn't a bad trade. It was going to be a miserable trade if Kakko was going the other way. That would have made it a horrible trade. But okay, it's a conditional second and a fifth, and the Penguins are retaining 25%. So you get Reilly Smith, who is
Reilly Smith for Goodrow's cap hit, basically.
Basically, yeah, and he's 33, and it's only a 1-year deal. Like he's a free agent after this year. So by all accounts, it's one, an audition, and two, Reilly Smith is really going to try to bounce back. I'm sure he knows that last year was for his standards, pretty bad. It was an abysmal year for him, especially given his teammates, how it all went down. The team didn't play well. He didn't play well. I'm sure that he's, aware enough to know that he didn't have a great year, and he's looking for a bounce back. So I would
He's got
have
one last chance. Year,
I would have to think that he's really going to have a good year for the Rangers this year. Now, whether it be with Kreider Zibanejad, maybe they do some line shuffling. We don't know. I mean, it's July 1st. Puck drop for the regular season isn't until 3.5 months from now, so we have plenty of time to finagle the lines. But I would have to imagine that Reilly Smith is going to play better this year than he did last year, only because on top of, like you said, on top of him just not having a great year last year, he wants to get paid again.
He's got one more chance.
He needs to show up here and then get overpaid by somebody next year. Like that's the whole point of bringing Reilly Smith in. So, okay, like that trade was fine. Again, like if Kakko was involved or if other things were involved, I would not like this trade. But you give up a couple of picks for somebody who needs to bounce back and is looking to set the world afire because he needs to get paid again. Fine. I think that's a fine deal. I have no issue. Chris Drury, you get a thumbs up for me. You get a W in the chat for me for that trade. Screw it. 2 thumbs up for that. Why not? Sure. These things are arbitrary anyway. I'll give you 2 thumbs up for that. But it all goes back to, okay, this trade worked. Fine. You still have the elephant in the closet that we talked about. You still have Jacob Trouba on the team. You still haven't signed Lindgren. You haven't signed Schneider. Do you want to bring back Lindgren? Are you dangling him to other teams? Are you dangling Schneider to other teams? Is Sam Carrick really the solution at 4C? His analytics suggest otherwise, but I'm not too bothered about it because if he doesn't play well, he can get buried. That contract can get buried in the minors. The 3-year deal, the 3-year contract was kind of a lot to me, and I'm not a fan of it. But again, it's only $1 million. If he gets sent down
to disappear,
if he gets sent down to the AHL, it doesn't matter in the NHL salary cap scheme of things. Whatever, I'm not too bothered by it because you can bury it. It's whatever. But if Sam Carrick is your solution to 4C. And Reilly Smith is your solution at 2C. Okay, well, again, we have to talk about the other elephant in the room unfortunately, still Filip Chytil. Because if he's your 3C and he goes down, is Sam Carrick your 3C now?
I think that's down the line of concerns for me. Oh, you're frozen again, Andrew. I don't know what to do with Chytil. It's a real conundrum the Rangers are going to have to figure out. And because of that, it's leaving a lot to chance. They've got him under contract for 3 more seasons. That you're back up, by the way. Yeah, Chytil's under contract for 3 more seasons, and they're really rolling the dice. There's not really for lack of a better word, responsible way to manage that spot because you're going to play the guy if you're paying him,
right?
But all it takes is one bump, and then we're back to square one of he's probably not going to be dependable long term. Now, there are options here. If they want to run him on the wing and then try and find a 3rd-line center because they think that might be cheaper, that's a possibility. If they want to try and facsimile some new variation of the top 6 using Chytil, there's probably a way they could do that. But be that as it may, as you said, you're one bump away from needing Sam Carrick to be your 3rd-line center or calling up somebody from the AHL who's probably not ready to be a 3rd-line center. And because of that, you have that as a lingering fear in your roster construction going forward indefinitely because you have him under contract for 3 more years. I struggle to imagine you're going to find somebody who would be willing to take that contract because of how tenuous that situation is, because it really is just one hit away. It's one of those things it's not something you can prepare for when you're putting together a roster.
It's just a scary situation to be in, and it's a no-win situation for everybody involved. Filip Chytil, when healthy, when he is back up to speed, is a very good hockey player. The problem is that he's also one hit away from having not just his hockey career be over, but having like serious life issues because of how many hits to the head he's taken over the course of his short career. So you're walking on eggshells with Filip Chytil, unfortunately. And again, we say this whenever we talk about Filip Chytil, like we want him to be healthy his entire career. Like it's such a scary situation that we just hope that he's good day to day. For hockey is secondary, man. Like hockey is a job. It's a passion. It's a job. It's something that we love to talk about, and Filip Chytil likes to do as a career. It's still a career. You got to make sure that you can get up in the morning, know where you are, right? Have the wherewithal to have all of your motor skills and all. hockey's great and all, but these things are kind of more important. And the worry is with Filip Chytil is that, yeah, I mean, he was supposed to be shut down all of last season, came back, was obviously out of shape, tried his best. He gets a pass for the playoffs. He comes back here in October. He's healthy. That's great. He gets one more bad hit, and I don't even want to say out loud like it's a really scary and dangerous situation for somebody to be in. And if you're the Rangers, you're thinking to yourself, okay, well, right now Hito's the 3C. If healthy, that's great. But what happens if somebody hits him again? Sam Carrick is your four C. Is he going to be your 3C? Is Othman going to be your 3C? The guy who was a power play merchant in the AHL last season and has a long way to go still? I see some people penciling in Brendan Othman into the starting lineup. I would hold on to that. Don't pencil him in yet. Like, I'm sure he's going to work on some stuff and get better this offseason.
I think there's a better chance Berard makes the opening night roster than Othman because of the skill set. Because Othman, they are going to want to play top 6. They're going to want him to get power play time. And if he's up here, he's not getting that. He's not getting on either power play unit, and they're not putting him ahead of Lafreniere, and they're not putting him ahead of Reilly Smith. I struggle to see a world where that's going to happen. So it would benefit him more to play first line down in Hartford. Now, you tell me the third line on opening night next year is going to be Chytil, Cooley, and Berard. I think there's a world where that's workable because they will be pretty quick, they'll be good forechecking, and they'll cycle okay. They're not putting up counting stats because they're just not those types of players. They're not going to get power play time. But in a vacuum, that's not bad. That is better than some of the third lines the Rangers have had opening night the last couple of seasons. I don't know how much a Sam Carrick, Jimmy Vesey, and then either Rempe or Edstrom or some other forward we're not thinking of fourth line works. But again, opening night doesn't mean that's going to be the team the entire season. Teams permeate and distill out into different forms as the season goes along. But let's open it up a little bit more and pivot away from just talking about the Rangers because a lot happened today. And one of the things we talked about before we started recording was who actually got better today because a whole lot of money got thrown around. And
over $1 billion.
Yeah, you look around, and let's start with just the Metro. The Devils unequivocally got better today.
Yes.
They replaced 2 defenseman spots on their team. They are not going to ask 21-year-old Luke Hughes and 20-year-old Simon Nemeth to do nearly as much as they did last year. They got Markstrom. They traded for Jake Allen at the deadline last year. They brought in Paul Carter for their third line. They signed Stefan Noesen, not Stefan Noesen, excuse me. They brought in another.
They did bring in Stefan Noesen.
That's what I was
deal.
Them and the Hurricanes keep trading people back and forth with each other.
Yeah, they got Brady Shea.
Yeah,
for 7 years.
No, Nashville got Brady Shea.
Who am I thinking of? Oh, they got Brendan Dillon. I'm sorry.
That's who you were thinking of. Yeah. They overhauled their defense. Yeah. The Devils unequivocally got better. The Islanders, they got better. Anthony Duclair's not a huge needle mover, but he's a solid hockey player. Yeah. He's better than, Matt Martin or Cal Clutterbuck or any of the various guys.
He might not be the biggest needle mover, but he is like the Islanders are unequivocal. Oh, yeah, the Devils got Brett Pesce. That's right. Thank you. And Vital 21 for that. Yeah, Brett Pesce was the one that got that. But the Islanders didn't make a whole ton of moves. But at the end of the day, Duclair isn't a top 1 player in the league. But if you compare the 2 forward lineups prior to Duclair and after Duclair, the lineup is better with Duclair. That's just objective.
On the bright side, some of the other teams in the division got worse.
Yeah,
the Penguins got worse.
Yes.
The Carolina Hurricanes got worse.
Oh, yes, they did.
The Hurricanes had a real brain drain. And I know we have spent the previous 40 minutes of this podcast saying that the Rangers kind of need to address their issues. The bright side is, other than the Devils, nobody else got really that much better. That is one thing the Rangers have working for them right now. Even if you extrapolate that outward, and you're not just talking about the Metro, and you talk about the Atlantic at large, the Bruins, Lindholm and Zadorov, I mean, sure.
Yeah.
The Leafs, Tanev and OEL, I mean, I guess. They brought back Max Domi, I mean, I guess. I'm not really worried about the Leafs. I'm not really worried about the Bruins. The Panthers lost two of their starting six defensemen from the Stanley Cup final. They may still stand to lose another one. They're going to have to figure out what their reconfigured top four is going to look like without Brandon Montour and without Oliver Ekman-Larsson. They kept Sam Reinhart. They very clearly have some moves to make, I think. But other than that, it's hard not to feel like the Rangers, just by simply having a decent foundation, are in a pretty good spot. But I think right now, as we sit here, the only team that genuinely worries me in the Metro is the Devils, and the
Yeah.
only teams in the East that worry me are the Devils and the Panthers. I think Carolina's brain drain is significant. I think Florida's going to have a hard time with the defense they're going to have to run out there. Maybe they make a trade and maybe they get someone I'm not thinking of, but they're going to probably take a step back. That's what's working for the Rangers not right now. Not nothing the Rangers themselves have actually done, but what's happened around them.
Yeah, I mean, the Devils definitely got a lot better, and I think the one thing people have to think about when we discuss the Devils is they had some of the worst goaltending in the ever last season. They didn't play the worst brand of hockey. They just couldn't stop a beach ball the entire season, and they fixed it way too late. Like their season was done, and then they tried to fix it. Even like Jake Allen was significantly better than what they had, but he just couldn't fix. There was a gaping hole. He put a Band-Aid on it. There's still a gaping hole, brother. Like I don't know what to tell you. Like Jake Allen tried his best, but you can't fix a gaping hole with a Band-Aid. So you bring in Markstrom. Now Jake Allen's the backup. You fix, at least the Devils think they did. They fixed the blue line. They're deeper now. You bring back Stefan Nason. This is a better team that they had last season, and I would have to think that Jack Hughes is going to be healthier than he was the season before. I mean, listen, we're Rangers fans, but at the end of the day, like we just want people to be healthy. Like I'm not wishing for Jack Hughes' shoulder to be made of clay or made of glass.
Pulled pork.
Yeah, like that's not what we do. Right, like we want people to be healthy. We want people to have long careers. We don't want Jack Hughes to wake up when he's 45 and have exorbitant shoulder pain. That's not what this is all about. So the Devils
and Dougie Hamilton. That's really the Devils.
And Dougie Hamilton, right?
If they
exactly.
Can both stay healthy.
Yeah.
The Devils are undoubtedly going to be one of the best teams in the East. You saw the difference.
Yes.
2 years ago, Dougie Hamilton and Jack Hughes were both healthy. Dougie had, I want to say, 60 points in 70 something games, and Jack Hughes was legitimately like fourth or fifth place in the Hart voting 2 years ago. Last year, Dougie Hamilton broke his jaw Thanksgiving weekend, didn't come back last year, and then Jack Hughes on and off dealing with the shoulder. Nico Hischier has always kind of had lingering injury issues. Feet and his ankles are real questions. But that Devils team is good. It's a matter of health for them. It's a matter of health.
It's a scary team, and they didn't make the playoffs last year because of injuries, and the goaltending was a disaster fire. But they are going to be one of the best teams in the East this season, and I feel like more people aren't waking up to that fact because the Devils were mediocre last year.
They also don't have the stink of Lindy Ruff on them either.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like you bring
I'm not the biggest Sheldon Keefe guy, but he's undoubtedly better than Lindy
Ruff. I mean, listen, here's the Dougie tore his pec last year, not
jaw was 2 years ago.
Yes. But like, and thank you, Chris, for that. Thank you for Chris for that comment. But like, the Devils are a dangerous team. They're a scary team. I understand that they are not in the minds of a lot of hockey fans, not hockey fans in general, not just Rangers fans, but a lot of fans in general, because they weren't great last season. They didn't make the playoffs, so they're not at the forefront of people's attention. But let me tell you something, that the Devils are going to be one of the best teams in the league this year. Okay, with that in mind, are the Rangers, the way they're built right now, able to compete with that? That's the question that not only you have to ask yourself as a fan, but Chris Drury has to ask himself the same thing, because I'm sure he knows what we know. This is not a secret that we're breaking to the world. The Devils are going to be good next year. We've seen the moves. I'm sure Drury had TSN up on his 9 TVs in his office. I'm sure they all had the tracker. I'm sure they all had all these breaking news things come on their phones. They know the Devils got better. It's up to them now to figure out, okay, well, did the move have the moves that we made so far enough to not only compete with the Devils but still be the better team? And
Oilers
also
are getting Jeff Skinner.
was kind of figuring that would happen, but now it's official. I'm sure it's probably going to be a 1 year or 2 year kind of cheap deal to see if he can actually make the playoffs for once. He hasn't he never played in the playoffs in juniors. Think of it this way: his playoff drought. He hasn't played in one playoff game his entire career in the NHL, and also he didn't play in the playoffs in juniors. My man's is going on nearly 20 years of not seeing playoff action. He is desperate for playoff action. So
That's one more guy the Rangers could have probably had, in all honesty, but we'll see. And it's not like Jeff Skinner is like this great player. It's the Rangers are going in with legitimately 2, if not 3 question marks on the right side of their depth chart.
The thing is this, is that is Jeff Skinner going to be this world beater 150 point guy? No. But if you put him in a position where all he has to do is go out there and score, then that is going to make the team deeper, because now that's one more guy you have to worry about to put the puck in the net. It just makes you a deeper team. Now, again, his defense, it doesn't exist. So if you can exploit that, if you're the other team, then you can find ways around that. But Jeff Skinner, by all accounts, even though he's one-dimensional, is a very talented goal scorer. Makes the team deeper and more dangerous by default when you have goal scorers across multiple lines. But Oilers got to him, and the Rangers need to find somebody like that, because the more goal scorers you can have, the more dangerous you are.
You froze. There you go. You're back.
Yeah, I mean, the more goal scorers you have, the more dangerous you are. It's just, especially when it gets to the playoffs. Even Jeff Skinner on the third line, who's not going to be this, this demon on, especially defensively. If he has the puck on his stick, you have to worry about him, because he has the ability to score whenever he wants.
The thing the Rangers have going for them is that they're the only team in the Metro where you can count on the goalie. You look at the other 7 teams in the Metro, no one else has a goalie they can really depend on. Markstrom has been an every other year kind of goalie. This past season, he was pretty good on an objectively really bad Flames team. 2 years ago, he was the reason the Flames missed the playoffs. He was that bad. He was under 900 for the first time since he was back in Florida. That's a real question mark for them. What does the workload look for between Jake Allen and Markstrom? You imagine that's probably 50-30-ish if you wanted to keep Markstrom as fresh as you possibly could. But the Rangers do have the one trump card that they do have Shesterkin.
Yep.
That alone gets you in the door. Getting in the door has never been the issue. Staying in there once you get there, that is the issue. Unfortunately for the Rangers, they are getting older. They are getting more expensive. With that in mind, they are going to have to roll the dice in that bargain bin, and they're going to have to hit something. You look at the Panthers and the decisions they made last year, where Mikkola, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, Kulikov, short-term decisions, put chips in on Sam Reinhart. The Rangers need to take a swing. And I know a few people have said to me, well, Trocheck was their swing. That's not a swing. They needed a second-line center. They needed to either bring back Ryan Strome or replace him. And because of that, they are in the position where they have to be creative. Because if they're not, if they're going to keep doing the bargain bin, you're going to have a harder time trying to capture that magic. They need to take a swing on somebody's restricted free agent and hammer it. They need their equivalent of they need to find another top 6 forward. That has been the issue for 3 years now. They have been short a top 6 forward for 3 straight seasons. Until they do that, I struggle to see them being able to break through. And then one last thing.
Yep.
You look out west. Colorado, not going to be the same team as they've been the last couple of years. They are really up against the cap ceiling, and they have a lot of holes just in their lineup, not alone like quality of their lineup. Nashville got unequivocally better.
Sure.
Still not that good of a team overall. Yeah. Dallas made some weird decisions. Winnipeg lost quite a few players. LA made some interesting decisions. The Oilers, they have a lot of free agents.
Rob Blake is losing the plot over there in LA.
I'm shocked
what he's doing.
I'm shocked he didn't get fired just in general.
Yes, I agree. And I was talking to somebody who covers the Kings, and I'm more like both of us are just in shock of what is happening with LA, because I was talking to them, and we agreed to the same conclusion of we cannot believe that Rob Blake still has a job. It is what he's doing in LA is not great, and giving Joel Edmondson a 4-year contract for almost $4 million a year when this man can barely skate. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? You outbid yourself, dude. Listen again. I understand the cap is going up. I get it's not going to be that big of a deal in a couple of years. That doesn't make the contract less bad, dude. It's still an awful contract. No one was giving Joel Edmondson that deal. Why did you do it? Why?
Yeah,
you outbid yourself.
Trading out Matt Roy for Joel Edmondson.
Awful.
They non-tendered
making.
Blake Lizotte for no real reason, even though he's somebody that I think is a pretty solid fourth liner. That's probably the only move Pittsburgh made in the last 3 days I actually liked.
Sure.
It feels like nobody really made a lot of progress today, other than the Devils. And even the Devils, they still have a lot of question marks because a lot of their formula is based on people staying healthy. You look around the league at large, Edmonton brought back Corey Perry. That doesn't really move the needle all that much. They need to figure out what they're doing up front. They still need to sign at least 3 forwards to fill out their bottom 6. But Vancouver, why'd you give Tyler Myers a 3-year extension?
Why give Ekman Larson, what was it, 4-year deal, 3-year deal? Why?
Yeah, the Leafs doing that was weird. Yeah. There's a lot of weird. Free agency got you into trouble.
And Tampa, this was a talking point on TSN, and I'll relay it here. Is Tampa really better with Gensel and McDonough than they were with Stamkos and Sergachev? Are they really Are they really better?
It's about the same.
If they were an okay team that didn't really do anything on playoff time last season, and for argument's sake that they're on the same level that they were last year, then what was this for? Now I understand, and Tampa people were throwing shade at Tampa for doing this. Stamkos is 34 years old. I understand he's the captain. He's been there for forever. Tampa has a history of doing this. They did it with St. Louis. They did it with Le Cavalier. When their stars or captains get old and they cannot replicate the magic, they get rid of them. They did it again with Stamkos. Stamkos is 34 years old. He got a 4-year deal in Nashville. I understand, Nashville, that they were okay with that. But Tampa was not okay with giving Stamkos a 4-year deal for $8 million. I understand why Tampa said no. It's okay to be mad or upset if you're a fan, or even if you're a general manager or other players around the league, like, oh, how could you do this? But you have to think of it from Brisebois' perspective of, he's 34, he's asking for Brinks trucks, and we just can't afford that given our team construction. So they said, thanks, but no thanks. Thanks for the memories. We're gonna get Jake Ensel, a guy who's much younger and as dynamic as you were a couple of years ago. So we're gonna do that. Sergachev was a shocker to me. I mean, I was not expecting that at all. But they got a couple of good pieces there in return. Like they're trying to essentially retool on the fly while trying to not dip in production. That team's gonna look a lot different. But real quick, I don't hate that move for Tampa Bay. It's tough. It's tough. I understand, not every decision that you make in this business is going to be popular or, a fan favorite, but Tampa's done this before, and by them doing it before, guess what? They have rings to show for it. So it's okay. It's probably the right thing to do. Hey, I understand you're our captain. You've delivered us Stanley Cups, but my guy, you're asking for way too much money that we can't give you because we're trying to compete for years to come. We can't do it. I'm sorry. Goodbye.
No one's bigger than the team. That's the ultimate walk away. Yep. And that's something that I'm not ready to say the Rangers needed to start exiling major pieces like Zibanejad or Kreider or Panarin, but there's going to come a point where the Rangers are going to have to do that. We're going to come to a point 2 years from now where Panarin's going to be a free agent. And are the Rangers going to have the conviction to say, thank you for what you've done, but we can't give you what you want? Or are they going to be stubborn and try and give him the golden parachute late 30s contract? Same thing with Kreider when that time comes, as someone pointed out, 3 years left, not 2. The Rangers are at a point where they're at the sliding doors. They could have really tried to load up one last time this upcoming season and dealt with the consequences next year. I will always take the side of the general manager who is willing to swing. That is a real difference in this league, that the general managers who are trying to win versus trying to keep their jobs. And I'm not saying Chris Drury is only looking out for himself, but I am saying based on the way he's handled the deadline, the Trouba situation, and free agency, I definitely think he realizes I got maybe two more cracks at this before I'm
Yeah.
shit out of luck.
Yeah.
I think he realizes that if this doesn't go right this upcoming season, I can't just fire Laviolette as my ripcord. That's not going to buy him any more credibility. That's not going to buy him any more time. He's already gotten to fire two different coaches, and he's only been the GM for 4 seasons. He fired David Quinn. People forget that. They gave David Quinn a week and did exit interviews, and then they got rid of him. He threw Gallant under the bus for the team 2 years ago when we all were kind of in agreement that the roster wasn't that good to begin with, and all it would have taken was slightly better moves, and you probably could have beat the Devils 2 years ago. But be that as it may, then you get to the deadline this past year, and the conversation is, would you do Perot for Gensel? And Drury says no. They go small because they don't have the requisite depth to beat Florida. They lose to Florida. And now we're here. They still don't have the depth to beat the best teams in the league.
Yeah.
They are once again going to ask Zibanejad, Kreider, Panarin, Trocheck, Fox, and Shesterkin to do a lot more work than they should. And they are going to bank on Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider, maybe Brennan Othman, maybe Brett Berard, maybe Will Cooley, maybe Kako Kako, maybe Alexi Lafreniere. That's 7 guys I just mentioned that are in the, well, all they got to do is be this.
Sure.
And you could throw Reilly Smith in there as well.
It's so easy to say. It's just, it's one of those situations where it's like, you could say you want these things, but like, I want the winning lottery tickets, brother. Like I too can wish for things. Doesn't mean I'm gonna get them.
Until the Rangers start to address these issues, we're going to have to wait. We've been going about an hour. Until the Rangers do anything else, unfortunately, the show is probably going to resemble this meandering conversation of what are the Rangers doing? Because until they actually do something, there's nothing for us to talk about. The one last thing we did want to get in before we get out of here. Gary Bettman, my brother in Christ, you are maybe the most abhorred commissioner in the 4 major sports. All you had to do, this is the easiest layup in the history of sports. You claim to care about doing the right thing. You claim to care about protecting people. Your league still does not have a standard sexualized misconduct policy. You're the only professional sports league in North America that does not have a standardized sexual misconduct policy. And you are allowing Joe Quenneville and you are allowing Stan Bowman back into your league because they asked nicely. In that statement they issued, there was no, they did X, Y, and Z. It was, they have dedicated a lot of time to change and rehabilitation. Until you tell me what those steps were, until you tell me how you as a league are making sure this doesn't happen again, you cannot tell me you're taking this problem seriously. The NHL gets a standardized sexual misconduct policy. Okay, I'll believe you're taking this seriously. And more importantly, if you are a professional hockey team considering bringing any of these people into your organization for anything other than letting people throw rotten fruit at them, you should be embarrassed.
I agree.
There is nothing to be gained by getting into bed with these people. Look what happened to the Blue Jackets. Mike Babcock was not an accessory to a conspiracy. He was just a piece of shit person. These people are bad people and accessories to a crime. And not only did what happened to Kyle Beach happen to Kyle Beach, nobody seems to bring up the fact that a kid in Michigan was molested because the Blackhawks failed to do anything. Nobody ever fucking brings that up. And what happened to Kyle Beach was abhorrent, and something else abhorrent happened.
Yes.
It's not just one thing. It is the Blackhawks knew about this. They didn't do anything about it, and they let what happened happen to that kid. The Blackhawks are still in court about this. They are still in court about this 3 years later, and you're telling me they've learned their lesson. The organization didn't learn shit because they got Connor Bedard a year later, and they paid $2 million. So that's the crime. And as we often say, if the penalty for something is money, it's not a penalty for rich people.
Yeah.
It's not a penalty for rich people. It's genuinely embarrassing. And they had the fucking balls to try and sneak it in the middle of free agency so people wouldn't notice. It's a blanket statement that all the insiders copy and paste from their inbox onto the social media feeds. And that's the end of the conversation. That's it. Now we wait. The Oilers hire Stan Bowman. I don't know how the Oiler fans will react, but I imagine it'll be comparable to what happened when the Bruins tried to sign Mitchell Miller 2 years ago. I imagine you will see widespread outcry, and then the Oilers will either double down on it and try and say, oh no, he's learned his lesson, or B, they will say, we didn't realize how much our community cared about this. And no matter what, you will look stupid.
Yeah.
There is nothing to be gained by trying to borrow the credibility of bad people. You are not going to accomplish anything other than getting into bed with bad people, which is a reflection on you. It is an utter embarrassment that you are letting these people back in your league, Gary. You're supposed to defend this league more than anything. And you consistently fail when there are serious, and we're not talking about like hits to the head. We're not talking about maybe the officials are point shaving. We're talking about sexual crimes here. We're talking about crimes, going to jail. Brad Aldrich went to jail for multiple years and then got out of jail. It is mind-boggling to me we are here. Less than 3 years after Quenneville and Bowman had to lose their jobs the first time.
And on top of that, I would have to wager that they're back because they've been successful hockey men.
Yeah.
Like, if they were not good at their jobs, I would have to think that the Bettman would have been like, oh, maybe let's not, maybe push it down the line until eventually he retires and then he lets it be somebody else's problem. But because they're Joel Quenneville and Stan Bowman, these quote-unquote pillars of the hockey community that have won Stanley Cups, that have won so many games, that have done this many quote-unquote good things in the league, that it's fine. They just did one bad thing. Oh, it's fine. Oh, it's okay. They learned their lesson, and now it's been a couple of years. They've underwent training, and they figured out why what they did was bad, and now they can be back. Listen, brother. All you had to do was not let them back in. That's all you had to do.
The thing. I know there are going to be people, and I forget which athletic writer said this. It might have been Scott Powers. It might have been Mark Lazarus said the ultimate acknowledgement of wrongdoing would be if they were reinstated and everybody passed. Yeah. Very clearly, they would not have asked for reinstatement if they did not think there was a chance of getting.
I agree.
Job.
Right off the bat, as soon as they get reinstated, Frank Saravalli was like, "Oh, the Oilers might hire Bowman for their GM spot." Like, dude, what are we doing? Like, what are we doing here? Genuinely, as soon as they get back from all of that garbage that happened, 8 seconds afterwards, the Oilers are on the phone with them already, dude. Like, man, I just.
And that's the thing.
It's bad, man.
You've seen it. The Oilers in the last 3 years, they took Evander Kane after the Sharks bought him out because he had gambled away all of his contract earnings and was accused of abuse by his wife. They said, we don't have any cap space, but Evander Kane might be able to score us some goals so we can overlook whatever he did because we need him. And then they gave him a 5-year contract that is aging terribly because they were desperate to get him. They brought in Corey Perry 2 months after whatever transpired in Chicago that even
which
the
we
Blackhawks,
still don't know about. No one knows. No one knows what happens.
Even the Blackhawks were like, "This is too much for us." And the Oilers said, "We need a bottom 9 we need a bottom 6 forward, somebody with experience who might be able to help us." And they brought in Corey Perry. You bring in Stan Bowman after hiring Ken Holland. You are saying, we don't care. We just want to win a Stanley Cup. We will do whatever it takes to win a Stanley Cup, and we will deal with the worst possible people. There is not a single way you can spin this. There isn't. There is no objective way you can spin this as anything other than embarrassing for everybody involved. It is unconscionable to think that you would do something like this against the backdrop of everything that is going on in the hockey world over the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
In good news, none of those scumbags from the 2018 Team Canada team got tendered qualifying offers. So we know right from wrong when it's not beneficial to us. When these guys are going to probably end up in court or in jail, well, that's too much for us. But these guys they weren't charged with a crime, but we all know what they did. It's out there. Go read the Jenner and Block report. It is publicly available. Go read what they did, what they prioritized, and what they said mattered about this situation. Tell me those guys, tell me someone who says sexual assault is a distraction and something that could take away from the team trying to win the Stanley Cup. Tell me how you as a fit, and that's not like a young person saying that. Joe Quinn was like 51 years old when he said that to the other people in the room, that it's hard to win the Stanley Cup. Let's deal with this later. You don't get to that point in your life and change your value system. I'm sorry. People in their 50s, in their 60s, those are who they are at that point.
Yep.
You're not going to tell me they're going to change who they are because of a few seminars, because they went to a few workshops. You're just not. Those people are going to those seminars, they're going to those workshops solely so they can get back in. And that's why not having a standardized policy is such a blight on the league, because it's at Gary Bettman's discretion, no one else's.
For a league that's trying really hard to tell people that they're one thing, you're really not doing a good job of actually showing it.
No, it is insane.
Yeah.
That'll just about do it for this week's episode of the show. If you could be so kind, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave the show a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. If you're watching over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell. Let us know in the comments, who did you want the Rangers to actually get that was out there that they didn't end up getting? And do you think there is any chance Jacob Trouba will be back on the team next year? Let us know in the comments. We will talk to you guys whenever news happens or next Monday.